Save the whales. Recycle. Save the earth. Or how about this one? Use green energy. These three things have something in common. Huh? But our money. Well, you're not too far off on that one. When I was, I was probably high school age somewhere. And in our science classes, I am a science buff. I love science, always have. And I was taking an earth science. I had a couple earth science classes, and if there was an earth science or geology or meteorology class, I was there. I was all over it. And one of the common themes that I was told was that by the year 2000, the polar ice caps are going to melt, and Florida is going to be underwater by the year 2000. That's what we were told. So not only did we have Y2K threat, that was threatening to shut down all of the computers in 2000, but I also had topped on top of this, because this is before, you got to think, this is before, I'm still an evolutionist at this point. This is before I've come to the realization of creation. I was convinced that the world was just going to fall apart and end. It never came to be. You know what all three of those things, save the whales, recycle, green energy, you know what those have in common? Global warming, or as they've retermed it now, climate change. You know what it is? It's a manner of control. To keep the masses petrified in order to keep the powers that be in control. This is why our politicians continue to run around in circles arguing amongst themselves rather than doing what's best for the country. It's because they want to stay in power. Anybody who's in power is afraid to lose said power. You see, what we believe about truth affects what we believe about the authority of God and God's word. First 2 weeks of this sermon series, right? What we believe about truth affects how we view the authority of God and the authority of God's word. That, in turn, affects whether or not we buy into the evolutionary mindset. The evolutionary mindset has been programmed into this culture for the better part of 200 years. I went to a class this past week and saw the evidence before my eyes. I knew it was there, and I knew that it was pre-programmed. I didn't know how long it had been going on. We are talking to the mid-18th century, mid-1700s. Slowly but surely, various advances have been made. And you know what the goal of programming the masses for evolution is? It's so subtle that you probably don't even recognize that this is the case. But the point of evolution is to prove or to take away the supernatural. It is to science away all of the miracles, all of the things that we just can't explain. It's naturalism in its pure form. It is what Romans 1 says as elevating the created above the creator. That's what naturalism is. We're putting the whales, we're cycling green energy, we're PETA's all over farmers these days and the cattle. Cows are people too. We have feelings, and really, it's an awful good steak on my plate. We are supposed to be stewards of our environment. Don't hear me say that that's not important. We are to be stewards of our environment. We are just not supposed to elevate it to the level above God. And that's what evolution is, as a naturalistic worldview. So here's the questions. I've got two different questions here for you to ponder on this morning. Number one, why get rid of the supernatural? Why get rid of the supernatural? What is so threatening about the supernatural? You see, the supernatural is so threatening because if the supernatural exists and things that we can't explain, that means that there's a God to answer to. But you know what else that means? Why get rid of the supernatural? Because the enemy wants to convince us that God does not exist, so that he can take his place. It's why he was kicked out of heaven in the first place. Go look up in Isaiah and Ezekiel, I believe. You'll see the story of why Satan was kicked out of heaven. It's because he wanted to be like God, his pride and arrogance. And that's what we found out last week, that he appealed to Eve in the garden. You see, because what's going to happen is the supernatural is going to be replaced with the natural. See, we've got this lie that says supernatural is less than natural. That's the little less than arrow mark. You know, I always learned in school that the alligator eats the bigger number, right? So supernatural is less than natural is what they're trying to convince us of. Okay, supernatural is less than natural. That Satan wants to do nothing more than convince us that the supernatural doesn't exist, that God doesn't exist. Why? Because when the end times comes around, what's he going to do? You remember what from our study last year before last, Christmas? Return of the King? What's he going to do? He's going to perform all kinds of false signs and wonders, isn't he? He's going to get there and he's going to perform acts and wonders that are going to be, quote unquote, supernatural in nature, and it is going to deceive the masses into believing that he is God. Yeah. But there will be others that follow. Follow suit. But they are going to be convinced that he is the Messiah. That's why we call him, I don't like the term Antichrist, because anti gives off the notion that it's against Christ. It's more of a pseudo Christ, taking Christ's place, or at least attempting to. Romans 1:18-32 is where we're going to be this morning, and we're going to be kind of all over the place. But we're going to start off in Romans 1:18. I'm going to read 18-32 here. It says, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because that which is known about God is evident within them, for God made it evident to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse. For even though they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks. But they became futile in their speculations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the incorruptible God for an image in the form of corruptible man, and of birds, and of four-footed animals, and crawling creatures. Therefore, God gave them over to the lust of their hearts, to impurity, so that their bodies would be dishonored among them. For they exchanged the truth of God for a lie." I'm going to put in there, "for the lie," "and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen." Now, last week we stopped right there at verse 25. Remember, we went through verses 20 and 25. It's not just the truth and a lie, but it is the truth and the lie. That's why I put that "the" in there, to remind you that it's not just a lie. It is the root lie of all creation, that God is not God. Okay. 26 goes on. For this reason, God gave them over to degrading passions, for their women exchanged the natural function for that which is unnatural. And in the same way, also, men abandoned the natural function of the woman and burned in their desire toward one another, and men with men committing indecent acts and receiving in their own persons the due penalty of their error. And just as they did not see fit to acknowledge God any longer, God gave them over to a depraved mind to do those things which are not proper, being filled with all unrighteousness, wickedness, greed, evil, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, malice. They are gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, arrogant, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, without understanding, untrustworthy, unloving, unmerciful. Yeah, quite a list, huh? And although they know the ordinance of God, that those who practice such things are worthy of death, they not only do the same, but also give a hearty approval to those who practice them. Verse 18 to 20 here, the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness. Why? Because these men suppress the truth. You see, God created the world, and it has been evident since the beginning that God is there. We are without excuse. All you have to do is look at creation. I mean, seriously, stand out at night and look up at the stars. Holy cow. Absolutely brilliant. And on a good, clear night away from all the lights of Tologa, you're out to the country and there's no lights, you can see the Milky Way galaxy. Wow. We are without excuse, guys. We have no excuse. He goes on and basically they exchanged the truth for the lie. They worshiped and served the creature rather than the creator. And then it goes on and 26 explains that it is because of this reason, men who suppress the truth, men who deny God without excuse, because it's all around us. We have no excuse to be worshiping, rocks and trees and birds and snakes and all this. We have no business worshiping all this other stuff, because even though you may think we don't have those idols today, we do have those idols today. People still worship a cow. It just comes in the form of PETA instead of a golden calf at the base of Mount Sinai. Yeah, huh? Or steak, yeah, or steak meat, Woo. We still have these idols. These idols. 26, for this reason, God has given them over. And what's the first thing that is described here by Paul? It's homosexuality, right? It's the first deviation away when you fail to acknowledge God. You see, when you fail to acknowledge God, sin creeps in. And it isn't shortly thereafter he does this. And just as they did not see fit to acknowledge God, in verse 28, he gave them over to a depraved mind to do those things which are not proper. Not proper is not just homosexuality, the practice of, or the approval of. It is this whole long list that seems never ending. Unrighteousness, wickedness, greed, evil, envy, murder, strife, deceit, malice, gossip, slanderers, haters of... Like, really? What are all these things have? What do all these things have in common? It is all about me. And I hate to tell you, but it ain't about you. They are completely self-focused. See, we know God's ordinance. But when was the last time you ever knew what was good for you? I don't know about you, but yeah. I think I know best, but I really don't know best. So the question is, well, with all of this said, the truth for the lie, We're moving kind of past this, authority of God and the authority of God's word. The question becomes creation or evolution. If, I'm going to say this now, I was going to wait till the end, but God's like, no, you need to say this now. So here, we're going to say this now. I am not saying that if you believe in evolution, you're not saved. That is not what I'm saying. Okay? There is a faith unto salvation. But if you expect to mature in the faith, you have got to deal with creation. You are going to. At one point or another, you are going to have to deal with creation. One point or another. So the question becomes, is it creation or is it evolution? Because if you're like me, okay, so I was raised Catholic and we, sorry, Mom, but we weren't taught to read the Bible. That's not your fault. That's not your fault because that's what you were taught, The Catholic Church did not encourage us to read our Bible. So I didn't read my Bible, but I always knew God created, but I had this blending of creation and evolution where, when I was in school, it was what, 2 billion years old was the universe and the earth or something like that. Now it's up to 4.5 billion years. More time doesn't make it more plausible. Just saying. I had this blend of creation or evolution. God created, but still, they're scientists. They can't be wrong. I'm just kind of sitting here going, well, evolution. There has to be some kind of truth to it because they know more science than I do. So you don't question the scientists. But let me help you decide on creation or evolution here. I'm going to present the argument for creation. You've heard evolution your whole life. I'm going to present the creation aspect. But before I do, I'm going to say this. I cannot prove creation. I cannot duplicate it. But let me tell you the flip side of that. Evolutionists can't prove it either. They cannot prove evolution. It is not provable. Neither one of them are, because we cannot duplicate it. Scientists have tried to duplicate evolution and they have failed every single time. Do not listen to the articles that tell you that, because it is not true. I now know enough science to know that they're full of baloney, and all they do is use circular arguments. Really? Like this one. How about this one? The lie that the rocks date the fossils, but yet the fossils date the rocks. That's how they prove carbon-14 dating and uranium lead dating. This radioactive dating, carbon dating. That's how they prove it. So basically, you put in whatever number you want, and that's how it comes out. You see, here's the thing: both creation and evolution are faith-based. You've probably never heard that before. We know creation is faith-based, but evolution is faith-based too, because we cannot prove it. Deuteronomy 17:6 and 19:15 say to establish the truth by 2 or more witnesses. Now we have things today. We have DNA testing. For courthouses. For if somebody commits a murder, we've got DNA testing. We can get fingerprints and all this stuff, and we can prove that somebody did something. But here's the problem: you can't really prove anything in the past. You still have to establish it by an eyewitness testimony. Bible says by 2 or more witnesses. Here's the problem with evolution. There are no witnesses. They don't have a case. Evolution does not have a case. Nobody was there. You see, but the Bible does. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That word God is Elohim. That word Elohim means multiple in one, as in like God. There are 3 witnesses to creation: God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. Your 4th witness right here. Evolution has no witnesses to back it up. whatsoever. So here's what we have to do. I cannot prove it. I cannot prove creation. I cannot prove evolution. But here's what we do. We look at what we find and observe the evidence. Okay? You've been taught evolution, and I'm going to encourage you to explore creation. Scotty, I've got a whole set of slides here. These are scientists, evolutionary scientists. Obviously, Darwinian evolution can operate only if life of some sort already exists, meaning life has to come from life. Louis Pasteur proved this. Now, pasteurized milk, life can only, the same guy, life can only come from life, okay? Darwinianism can offer no help in explaining that all-important first step, the origin of life. But if the central principle of life fails to explain the origin of life, we are left with a problem. What other principle or principles might explain how it all began? Life only comes from life. You cannot create life from nothing. The Big Bang, that is a lie. Where did it begin? Life has to come from life somewhere. Next slide. We have a rough idea when it began, and even that is very debatable and questionable. When it began on Earth, and some interesting theories about where, but the how part has everyone stumped. Evolutionary scientists saying that how it all started is stumping them. This is from their own journals. They're not going to teach us in your science books or anything out in the public. This is from their own journals. Nobody knows how a mixture of lifeless chemicals spontaneously organize themselves into the first living cell. Next slide. According to this story, every tree, this is NASA scientist Dr. Robert Jastrow. According to this story, every tree, every blade of grass, every creature in the sea and on the land evolved out of one parent strand of molecular pattern drifting lazily in a warm pool. What concrete evidence supports the remarkable theory of the origin of life? There is none. An evolutionary scientist saying this, they don't know where the origin of life comes in. They can't prove it. Next slide. In an interview with Christianity Today, astronomers now find that they have painted themselves into a corner because they have proven by their own methods that the world began abruptly in an act of creation to which you can trace the seeds of every star, every planet, every living thing in this cosmos and on the earth. And they have found that all this happened as a product of forces they cannot hope to discover. There are what I or anyone would call supernatural forces at work is now, I think, scientifically proven. Next slide. Evidence? The origin of animals is almost as much of a mystery as the origin of life. Next slide. An honest man, armed with all knowledge available to us now, and this was in 1981, could only state that in some sense the origin of life appears at the moment to be almost a miracle. So many are the conditions which would have to have been satisfied to get it going. Next slide. It is very clear that evolution simply cannot happen no matter how long one is prepared to wait. Evolution is statistically impossible. Next slide. These are evolutionary scientists admitting that they have no explanation. You were not taught that in school, I guarantee you. I want to encourage you to do this. I am not a scientist, nor do I claim to be. I cannot prove creation, nor can I disprove evolution. I want to encourage you to go to the Institute for Creation Research, to the Creation Truth Foundation, to Answers in Genesis. Find a guy on Facebook. His ministry is called Points of Origins. It's Dr. Jackson. Find the creation ministries and explore it, because you've got one of two good things going on inside of you right now. It's the same thing that I was confronted with in 2009. You've got two things going on possibly inside of you. One is you've got a knot in the pit of your stomach, realizing that what you've been taught is not right. Or you are looking at me like I am a plumb fool. It's one of the two. You either think I'm an idiot and I'm gullible and I'm crazy, or you think that what I'm presenting here might actually be the truth, and there may be consequences to that. You see, there are attempts to science away the supernatural. These guys, these evolutionists, start from the vantage point that there is no God, and they are doing everything they can to prove that God does not exist. They are what the Bible describes as children of the devil. They try to science away creation with the Big Bang. They try to science away miracles by saying God didn't really part the Red Sea. He just parted a shallow lake at the northern part of the delta of the Nile, and it wasn't that big of a deal. There is a video game out there even. I played it when it first came out. Boy, this was what, early 2000s? It's a game called the Assassin's Creed. And they dared to explain away the miracles of Jesus by this supernatural orb from aliens in space. That's how they explained all the supernatural events in the history of the world. Now it's a video game, it's not real. But this is the mindset. This is the general mindset of people in the culture. We insist on educating and indoctrinating kids young, so that way by the time they get to our age, they believe it blindly. Here's my problem with the science curriculums in public schools. They are not willing to present both sides of the argument. You want to know if somebody's lying? They're not willing to share the other side of the argument. There are some teachers, and I have to say that there are some teachers out there that despite losing their job, will present both sides of the argument. They will try. They may get shut down in the process, but they will try to present both sides of the argument. 1 Kings 3:16-28 is the story of Solomon and the two mothers, two harlots, prostitutes, had a child. They both had a child, and they were sleeping in bed one night, one in one room, the other in the other room. One lady rolled over and killed her baby on accident. The other mother was sleeping in bed with her baby. The mother whose baby died switched babies. You know the story, right? They go before King Solomon arguing over which child is whose, and King Solomon's like, want to know who the true mother is? Split the kid down the middle. You give half to this one and half to this one. And the true mother of the child stands up and goes, what? Let her have the child, don't kill him. The mother who's not the mother goes, split him down in half in the middle, I don't care. And Solomon goes, that's not his mom, that's his. You want to know the truth, you present both sides of the argument. I insist on teaching my kids both evolution and creation because I'm not afraid of evolution. I'm just not. There's no, especially having been an atheist, an evolutionist for 30 years. There's no substance to it. There's nothing there. See, we teach our kids what to think, not how to think. In presenting both sides of the argument, I am teaching them how to think. I'm not telling them this is the facts and this is what you believe. No. You educate them on both and teach them how to think. Ephesians 6:10 to 17 goes on, and here is the crux of the matter. Okay, here is this is it. Ephesians 6:10 to 11, 10 to 17. We all know this one. Finally, be strong in the Lord and the strength of his might. Put on the full armor of God so that you will be able to stand firm against the schemes of the devil. Verse 12 is what I want you to listen to. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places. This is not a battle over a country or a world. This is a battle larger than what I have even estimated. You see, we live in two worlds. Bill said it this morning. We live in two worlds. We live in a physical world that we can reach out and we can touch. You know, AT&T. Reach out and touch someone. You remember those commercials? We live in a world that we can reach out and we can touch. But there is a world just beyond our sight, just beyond our hearing, just beyond our touch, just beyond our smell and our physical senses. There is a world just beyond that we cannot see, feel, hear, taste, or touch. But yet it is the most real thing on the face of the planet. We live in two worlds, a physical world and a spiritual world. It is in the beginning. It is in Genesis 1:1. 1:2. Sorry. It is in the first two. There is a physical and there is a spiritual. That is an undeniable fact. The problem is that most people operate in their daily lives completely oblivious, or they're in complete denial, depending on what their worldview is, to the spiritual world. The first step in the process is to recognize that we live in two different worlds. Okay? The second step is to realize that atheists, evolutionists, and yes, even Christian evolutionists, there is such a term, there is a faith unto salvation, trust me, it's okay. You don't have to believe in creation in order to be saved. But I'm telling you, you will have to deal with creation at one point or another if you want to spiritually mature. You need to recognize that these people are not our enemies. Do not attack them and belittle them and tell them they're stupid. No, because that's not going to do anything. My friends, they're deceived. Which is why if you're sitting up here saying that I'm a lunatic right now, that's what's going on. It is deception, pure and simple. The enemy has pulled the wool over our eyes. And I'm telling you, you've heard me say that story a million times, but in 2009, it wrecked my world. And I darn near walked away from my faith because of it. The third principle here is that we need to solidify, we need to renew our mind in the truth that the supernatural is not less than natural, that the supernatural is greater than the natural. We have got to renew our mind in that fact. Because here it is. I told you at the beginning, I love science. Love science. There are scientific theories out there that explain why things look so old. Scientific theories. Again, can't prove it. These are just scientific theories. There are scientific theories out there to explain why things look so old. And they're actually fairly plausible. I mean, I'm no scientist, but dang, makes sense to me. There are some that are less plausible than others, but there are scientists out there that are working in this. Catastrophic plate tectonics is one of the theories. Again, can't prove it, but one of the theories of Noah's flood and how it happened, and how the world went from this Pangeic single continent to the continents that we see today in a matter of 150, 300 days. How did that happen? Well, catastrophic plate tectonics theory attempts to explain that. It doesn't matter. Believing in creation or evolution it's not going to save you. What is going to save you is Jesus Christ. That is the salvation. That's the good news. That's why the gospel actually means good news. And it is good news. Because I don't know about y'all, but I'm pretty messed up. I'm very, very thankful that I've got a Savior that takes the junk of my life and makes masterpieces beyond my wildest dreams. It's awesome. Where are you at? If you are where I was at 10, 11 years ago, don't let this go. Yes, the earth is 6,000 years old, not 4.5 billion. I firmly believe it. If you add up the Bible time, we're in it's like 5970. If you go from now back to Adam and Eve, it's like 5970 or something like that. It's the Hebrew calendar. Counting towards the Hebrew calendar. It's somewhere around that general vicinity. I don't know the exact number right off the top of my head. But I want to encourage you, don't let this wreck your faith like I did. Use this as a tool to ask God to open your eyes to His truth. You need help, come talk to me. I'll point you in the right direction. I probably won't have all the answers. As a matter of fact, I know I don't have all the answers, but I can point you in the right direction. Where are you at this morning?